Welcome back, everyone. Today we will be looking at another computer game featuring Stockfish and Leela. In this game, Stockfish sacrificed the queen early on and played a majestic positional middle game down a queen. Prepare yourselves. The game begins with d4, knight f6, c4 and g6, preparing either a Grunfeld in which black will play d5 or a King's Indian in which black will play bishop g7 and d6. Knight c3, bishop g7, e4, d6 and then f3. This is the same-ish variation of the King's Indian defense. The move f3 supports the center and prevents knight g5 after bishop e3. Castles, knight e2 and c5. This is a typical move in the King's Indian, provoking white to push his d-pawn forward, in which black will have great control over the dark squares and the e5 square. Bishop e3 keeping the tension and asking black to take on d4, after which white will play knight takes d4 with a strong centralized knight. Knight d7. Stockfish continues to develop and keeps the central tension. Queen d2 from Leela. A flexible move not committing any pawns or pieces and preparing long castles. Black then responds with a6, controlling the b5 square and preparing a future b5 and queenside attack. Long castles and queen a5, developing the queen and pressuring the queen side. King b1 guarding the a2 pawn, and then the fish starts the queenside attack with b5, trying to open up the queenside to attack the white king. Knight d5 from Leela, centralizing the knight and opening the queen's sights of each other. White's idea is that after queen takes d2, there is the intermezzo. Knight takes e2 check, winning a pawn before recapturing the queen. This is why king b1 was important, to protect the a2 pawn and make sure that queen takes d2 is not a check. So, Stockfish's queen and pawn are hanging, and instead of retreating the queen to the passive d8 defending the e7 pawn, Stockfish instead decides to uncork a brilliant queen sacrifice with the beautiful knight takes d5. Leela now takes the queen and Stockfish takes the bishop on e3. Stockfish only has 2 minor pieces for the queen, and that usually isn't enough. But watch how Stockfish masterfully plays the middle game, using the 2 minor pieces as well as the better activity and attack to compensate for the lost queen. Rook c1 from Leela, and then knight takes c4, grabbing a pawn and attacking the queen. Queen e1, and now c takes d4. Stockfish picks up another pawn and now has sufficient compensation for the queen. Knight f4 from Leela, developing the knight and opening the light square bishop, who may exchange himself for the knight, as he serves no major purpose and is of the same color as white's pawns. Knight e5, centralizing the knight, opening up the light square bishop and preparing a potential d3 pawn advance. Knight d5 from Leela, centralizing the knight, and then d3 from the fish with the threat of d2, forking the queen and rook. Rook c3 from Leela, attacking the pawn and getting the rook out of the fork. Bishop e3 from the fish, trying to get rid of the knight to enable b4 with a deadly attack on the white king. Knight takes e7 check, king h8, and now bishop takes d3. Leela got the 2 pawns back, but in exchange, Stockfish got time. And time is all it needs to create a devastating attack. You can pause the video to find the brilliant move that Stockfish played in this position. In this position, Stockfish played the amazing knight takes b2. The idea being that if king takes, then the king will be in line with the bishop and black would have the lovely knight takes d3 check, winning the queen. For this reason, Leela plays bishop c2, moving the bishop to safety and still controlling the d3 square. Knight c4 from Stockfish. Both knights are now encroaching and restricting the white king, and the black bishop is now taking part in the game. Rook b3 from Leela, sliding the rook out of danger. Stockfish follows up with bishop f6, pressuring the knight and preventing queen h4. f4 from Leela. Stockfish cannot take the hanging knight immediately, as then the bishop will relinquish its defense of b2, and white will be able to trade many pieces, relieving the fish's pressure and increasing the strength of the queen. Stockfish therefore plays rook ae8, attacking the knight with the rook. f5 from Leela, counterattacking the black bishop. Rook takes e7, f takes e6, and rook takes e6. Black is now up 2 pawns and has 2 minor pieces for the queen. In a human game, any side could win here, but in an engine game, Stockfish shows how to meticulously squeeze every last drop out of its advantage. h4 from Leela, trying to instigate on the king side and open up black's king. h6 from the fish, preparing to meet h5 with g5, blockading the pawns. Rook f1, bringing the rook to the open file and threatening to take the bishop, after which Leela would take the knights. Stockfish therefore retreats the bishop to g7 and Leela follows up with h5, forcing black to put his pawns on dark squares, thereby weakening the light squares and increasing the power of the light square bishop. Rook f3 attacking the f7 pawn and knight e5 counterattacking and defending. The king can't take the knight due to knight takes f3 with a discovered check. Rook a3. Leela forced knight e5 so that now it can switch its attack to the weak a6 pawn. Rook a8 defending and rook c3. Stockfish is defending all the threats, and it's only a matter of time before Leela runs out of moves. Knight c4 closing down the file and re-centralizing the knight. a3, king g8 and king a2. Both sides make small improving moves. Knight d7 opening up the bishop's attack on the rook. Rook f3 and rook e7 defending. Queen d1, knight e5, rook g3 and rook b8. Leela is slowly running out of moves while Stockfish slowly improves its position. Bishop b3, rook c7, rook c3 and knight c6 attacking the rook with the dark square bishop. e5 sacrificing the pawn. Leela is starting to crack. Bishop takes e5 and queen d3. Leela gives away the rook. It didn't have to do this, and from a practical or human perspective it's not a good move, but as an engine, it is the best move and allows Leela to put up the best defense. Bishop takes c3, queen takes c3 and knight e5, centralizing the knight and defending the c4 knight. The knights now form a strong bind. Rook f6 pressuring the black position and then rook d8 defending. Bishop takes c4 from Leela. Rook takes h6 doesn't work as after king g7, the rook is trapped. Rook takes c4 and now queen d2. Black now has great compensation for the queen in the form of a rook, a knight, and 4 extra pawns. Queen d2 threatens rook takes h6, so black responds with rook c8 with a counter threat of rook c2 check, picking up the queen. King b1 avoiding this, and then knight g4 attacking the rook and defending the pawn. Rook takes d6 and rook f4 threatening rook f1 and rook f2. Queen a5, rook e8, rook d8, takes, and king g7. Stockfish is now up 2 pawns and will try to turn that into a win. Queen d6 centralizing and attacking a6. Rook a4 defending and attacking. King c1, knight f6, king d1. Knight takes h5 and king e2. Leela tries to use the king to cover the king side while the queen defends the a6 pawn and covers the queen side. Knight f6 and queen c5 and rook c4. Stockfish will now very slowly improve the position and advance its pawns. Queen a7, rook g4, king f2, rook a4, queen e7, knight e4 check, king e3 and h5. Leela can never trade the queen for the rook and knight as Stockfish has too many pawns and will easily win the king and pawn ending. g3 and g4. Queen e5 check, king g6, king e2 and f5. King f1, knight f6, queen c5, rook c4, queen e5 and rook c1 check. King g2 and rook d1. Queen c3, rook d6, a4 and now h5. Stockfish plans on sacrificing the h-pawn to create 2 connected passed pawns, or create a protected passed h-pawn. A takes b5 and before recapturing, Stockfish throws an h3 check, king b1 and then it takes b5. Queen b3 from Leela and b4, letting Leela take the pawn. But the queen will then end up on a bad square. Queen takes b4 and rook d1 check, king h2 and knight e4. Leela now cannot get to the black king in any way. Queen b6 the only check. Rook d6 and queen b8, trying to attack the black king from behind with the hopes of a perpetual. Rook d2, king h1 and king f6. The black king is going for a run. Queen h8 check, king e6, queen g8 check, and king e5. Leela proceeds to give a few checks before playing queen b8. King e2 from the fish. Black's king is safe amongst its pieces. Queen e5 and rook d3 attacking white's last pawn. King G1, Rook takes G3 check, King H2 and King E3. Queen E7 and now Stockfish executes a mate in 10 starting with King F2, Queen A7, Rook E3, King H1, G3, Queen A2, King F3, Queen F2 check hoping for King takes F2, after which the game will end in stalemate. A dirty trick to maybe try and blitz against a human, but Stockfish doesn't fall for it. Knight takes F2 check, King G1 and Rook E1 checkmate. This game was a brilliant positional masterclass showcasing how to play against a queen. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed this game and smash that subscribe button to never miss out on other brilliant games. Hope you learned something and keep improving your chess. Now, go promote some pawns.